Chilling tales for dark nights.
Knuckle's Supper. Written by Stepek. Performed here by Jason Hill. Chapter 27. Lepers. I stumbled through downtown Los Angeles. I knew the habit wouldn't come after me. She had already made her point. Hopefully, the cops would investigate the house. As far as the cloth was concerned, when they sobered up, they were going to be too busy trying to explain to their friends at the LAPD how Father McAteer was killed. The scene left there was beyond ugly. There was a good chance they were going to just burn down the entire place and suck a little more money out of their tax-exempt status and whatever insurance company would cover a radical cult like theirs. Every few steps, I looked for rats, possums, anything I could, all the while keeping my eyes peeled for a red cross tag. There were several downtown, but since I never really paid attention to them, I only had a vague memory of their whereabouts. Downtown Los Angeles at night, at least in the shit area I was in, was dead. And I was about to become another victim of its streets if I didn't find blood to heal myself soon. My body was still riddled with lacerations, and my skull was nearly caved in from being beaten by the rent-a-priests of the cloth. I stopped next to a dumpster and tried to pull out the multiple bullets that the habit knocked off at me. Even though I risked losing more blood by opening my wounds, the bullets weren't going to just fall out of my body. I was coming down from my methadone blahs. The heroin replacement only bottled up the withdrawal long enough for you to keep it, causing lethargy rather than euphoria. The cloth knew just the right dose to keep me a bloodhound during the hunt and a chihuahua the rest of the time. I looked into the dumpster and began my dive to find any kind of vermin that would provide me even a little bit of sustenance. Nothing. I shook my head and focused my eyes. You need heroin. I tried to ignore the gooch until, finally, I spotted a condemned building with a Red Cross tag about a half a block away. I needed shelter as much as I needed blood, so I bunny hopped on my left leg, using my arm to brace myself against a brick wall. I clenched my hand into a fist as much as I was able to and hammered on the master lock security latch on the front door. Then, I realized the lock was on the outside. I didn't find it too strange, I guess. Just a small deterrent from squatters. After all, anyone walking into this place was going to be in more trouble than the vampire owner inside. I stumbled into the decrepit old building. Though I couldn't see much, I judged from the molding and auditorium ceiling that it must have been a theater before downtown died and relocated to Hollywood. Using a handrail for support, I began dragging myself up the stairs, hoping to find an opera box. The degenerating steps creaked and almost gave out with every stride I took. Pigeon shit made the stairs slippery, and at one point I fumbled to my knees. All I knew was that I had to get out of that main area and safely hide myself because the sun was coming up fast. I wouldn't die from direct contact with the light, but I would die from dehydration, lack of blood, and that whole sobriety thing. I reached the top stair, snapping the neck of a dead pigeon open as I stomped to my final destination. I looked around. It wasn't completely dark because of some of the painted glass panes on both sides of the large attic, but it was gloomy and empty enough for me to lay low. I was sure I could find a blanket to cover myself. "What do you want?" a raspy voice questioned from the far corner. "You cop?" I shielded my eyes from the colored rays beginning to filter into the room like disco ball reflections. I couldn't make out the figure. "I'm not a cop," I said, and collapsed. My face hit bird shit and caught splinters from the wood floor. I heard shuffling. As the shape got closer, I noticed that it was a bearded man using his hands to drag what was left of his torso toward me. He got closer and spoke, trying to keep conscious. "You okay, man?" We haven't had anyone new come up here for a while. I need to get out of this light, I croaked. He picked my head up and pried my eyes open, looking inside like a doctor. Don't we all, brother? Makes you wish you were human, huh? How did you know I was? No need to explain. We all end up here at one point or another. The man's breath reeked of Mad Dog 2020, and the only teeth that were left behind his filthy, cracked lips dangled by roots. Whiskers popped from almost every busted pore on his face, and his lashless eyes were so bulged that his eyelids didn't fully close when he blinked. Here, he said, planting where his body ended at the pelvis directly under him. He bent his shoulders backward to support my weight, and I used both my arms to bring myself up. When he was sure I was on my feet, he fell to his hands and began dragging himself back to the corner. Follow me, he advised. What's your name? I didn't answer. That's okay, buddy. There'll be plenty of time for that. You said there were others, I asked. Yeah, some are still out hunting, getting high, whatever. The rest are passed out. Long day. There's a lot going on in LA for our kind right now. What do you mean? Yeah. Let's just get you some blood and I'll tell you all about it, buddy. I limped along behind him. Down this hall. We got some decent blood down here. I followed him down the hall, still shielding my eyes and trying to keep as much of my skin from the light as I could. He opened a curtain into the opera box. In one corner was a tent, and in the other was a cooler. 2 beach chairs and a fake campfire served as the centerpiece of my new friend's crib. He pointed at the campfire. Found this in the prop room. Pretty cool, buddy? It works on 4 batteries. He dragged himself over to the cooler and opened it. Oh, shit, man. Running a little low. I hope the hunters come back with some good food for tonight, he said, handing me a mason jar filled with blood. I took a swig and passed it back to him. He rejected my offering. Oh, you're in worse shape than me right now, buddy. You can get me back some other time. I took back the bottle and sucked it down to the last drop. It hurts passing over the line of my throat where the dog collar had been clamped just hours earlier. Who are you? I asked, licking my lips. They call me Shaver. He scratched his beard. I think it's on account of that I have this prickly pear beard. Could be because I'm shaved in half, though. I swept my gums clean of blood. How did that happen? I was fucked up on PCP, trying to drink some bitch's blood in a Safeway parking lot, and her husband ran me over with a car. I guess they figured they were in the wrong, or they were drunk because they took off. I made my way back to Skid Row and they brought me here. Who are they? A gang? Hell, no more gangs around here, buddy. This is where all the screwball vamp people come. It's kinda like a veterans hospital for the fuck-ups who can't really hunt no more. Then where's the blood come from? We work together. The ones who ain't got no legs use the legs of the ones who ain't got no arms. The ones with no eyes, them is the fucked up ones, buddy. We usually drop them off on the curb at night as bait. Bait, I thought to myself. I had to find bait. What was that talk about? Changes in LA? I started licking the rim of the mason jar. I felt some of my strength coming back. It's neither here or there for me, buddy. Some stuff about a new way and all that. Heard that King Cobra is dead. A nail hammered into my spine. You know King Cobra? Sure. That black bastard ran LA since I can remember. Some of the other gangs come by here and pay for information about shit we've seen with blood. What gang is that? Damn, son, I don't know or care. They give me blood. I'm tired. Take that there blanket, get some sleep. Looks like you had a bad day. As instructed, I grabbed the blanket and pulled it over my head. I was too weak to go anywhere near the light, so I was trapped in the opera box with that smelly transient at least until sundown. What little he did know, or cared to know, he had told me. It was enough. I was being hunted. He ended the night with, "Have a good day, buddy," then turned off the faux campfire. I decided I'd better get some sleep and prepare for the worst. A filthy hand tugged at my arm. "Wake up, buddy. Feeding time." I covered my head, momentarily forgetting where I was. "It's okay. I'll get us some rations and then introduce you to the boys later." "Shaver," a voice called out from behind the curtain. "I'm coming," the whiskered cripple said. Shaver crawled across the room. His tied pant leg brushed across my feet. I heard the curtain pull back. I hid under the blanket, hoping that it was an ask questions later halfway house. "Can I get some extra for my buddy here? He came in early this morning, really bad shape. Looks like someone tried to hang him." I rubbed at the burn mark around my neck. "He's real shy, but I'll introduce you later." A boot kicked me in the leg. I let out a grunt. I imagined they were checking to see if there was a living body under the blanket or if Shaver was just making shit up so he could get more blood. The voice stuttered. "Oh, I don't know, Shaver. We only have enough for people already here. You know the rules of bringing in newbies." Shaver patted my leg. "My buddy here's in bad shape. I promise you, I'll bring him to meet and greet before the hunt. Looks like he can pack a punch. Could be a big help around here." The boot kicked at me again. I grunted louder. "This time only," the voice said. The curtain closed. I peeked out from underneath the blanket. "Thanks, Shaver. I appreciate your help." I backed my body up against the inside of the curved opera box as Shaver turned on the fake campfire and handed me a cocktail. My body still ached, and the pain in my neck had only worsened from sleeping in the cramped corner. I drank the blood slowly. "This is good shit today, huh, buddy?" The sour taste of the cold blood tasted like pissed-out lemonade mixed with ragu. "It's great," I said, hiding my true feelings. "So, Shaver, what do you do around here? I mean, since you don't hunt." "That's the thing. I'm the eyes and ears of this place. I have eyes for the sad saps that don't, and I have the ears for those who don't like to hear. I keep lookout. Watch the place. Make sure no cops are around. They make me feel pretty important." I guess you're lucky after all. What time do you have to start your post? The second he left the box, I was going to get the fuck out of there.
"I'm running a little late now, but they'll understand. I got someone new to help us out, right, buddy?"
He slapped me on the back. That's right, Shaver. Listen, I'm going to get back to sleep and let you get to your, eyes and ears. Wake me up when you get back so I can meet your boys. Hopefully by then I'll be feeling better." I slumped back down into my cocoon, but before I covered my head, I added, "Thanks, Shaver."
"Ask him for heroin, stupid. Ain't no thing, buddy. Just like I said, everyone ends up here at some point or another. Kinda surprised King Cobra never ended up here."
He turned off the campfire. I pretended to rub my eyes like I was nodding off. It is kind of a surprise. I pulled the blanket over my head again as Shaver started his journey into a night's worth of bulldogging the theater. When I heard the swinging door at the end of the hall push open and then close, I started to make my move. I slugged down what was left of my blood and looked into the cooler for more. Nothing. I really didn't want to steal from this poor guy anyway. As I slid my combat boots on, I patted around the inside of the tent to see if I could find anything. I came across a small baggie of something. Since I didn't recognize it, I decided to leave it. Shaver did say he did PCP, and I had no interest in flying off the building after being sober for however long. I slowly pulled back the edge of the curtain and glanced down the hallway. No one was there. I guessed that they were all out doing their nightly duties in the streets. If all I had to worry about was Shaver and the jerk that kicked me, I was home free. Besides, the guy sounded kind of like a pussy. Cautiously, I made my way down the hall, the opposite way Shaver exited. I hovered next to the wall, sideways, so I could monitor activities from both directions. It was silent. Then again, the habit deafened one of my eardrums with all her gunfire. I started down the stairs, then stopped when I faintly heard voices. Hopefully, I would find a stage at the bottom of the back staircase to conceal my movements. I continued my descent quietly, eyes darting to every corner as I made my way to the bottom of the stairs. The moldy carpeting smelled like death twice over. The first was the decay of the building, and the second was the decay of the displaced transients that moved in and called it home. As expected, the staircase took me backstage. The curtain was spray-painted black with several different tags from several different gangs, some of which had been retired a long time before I was in the Knucklers. I walked parallel to the curtain without getting too close. I didn't want to disturb any of the pleats on the opposite side. Rat traps layered the floor. I guess they were for dinner, even though I doubted any living rodent had roamed around there in ages. People were on the other side of the curtain. I heard them mumble and could feel their hunger. As I looked around backstage, I noticed something. Limbless theater mannequins everywhere. The only body parts remaining were torsos and heads, most of which were nailed to the wall or hung from chains. All the eyes were dug out. And then, snap. Not paying attention to where I was walking, I became the rat caught in a trap. On both sides of the stage, two legless figures, harnessed with rope, descended like sandbags. The crusty curtains pulled back, and a spotlight nailed me directly in the eyes. I covered my face and fell to the ground, setting off a domino effect of mousetraps around the stage. Laughter erupted from the audience. Trying to avoid the light by bobbing my head from side to side, I picked the traps off my jeans and looked into the crowd. All I could see were silhouettes of misshaped figures, twisted, stumped, and ragged. The laughter raged on, and Shaver slithered into the house lights reserved for the orchestra pit's pre-performance preparation. His eyes scrunched in the light as he pointed at me.
"That's him, right?"
he yelled, begging for the adoration of his tangled brood.
"That's RJ fucking Reynolds. I'd know that son of a bitch anywhere."
He kicked out his legless backside like a starving donkey. Another figure stepped out of the darkness that engulfed the back of the theater and patted Shaver on the head with some kind of claw-shaped appendage. I would clap. His smug little voice whimpered. "But as you can see, I have no hands." He lifted two steel hooks into the light. Catching me off guard, the two disfigured rejects acting as sandbags clamped onto my legs. Their arms were powerhouses, strengthened by years of dragging themselves around. The hook-handed figure proceeded toward me. "Remember me, RJ?" he asked, sharpening his hook blades on each other. He didn't have to tell me his name, probably because I never bothered to learn it or care what it was. It was the Desian bottom feeder. More accurately, it was the bottom feeder that I force-fed his own hands to. Behind him, the congregation of deformities limped, crept, shuffled, and moaned their way into the pit lights. Each wave of atrocities that emerged from the shadows was more horrible and disfigured than the row that preceded them. It was as if they were arranged by rank from totally fucked up to so fucked up that they were simply the crumbs of something that at one time might have been a cookie. Hook Hand stood over me as the sandbags pulled me down to my knees. Then, he licked his right hook. As the stainless steel left his tongue, he plunged it into my left shoulder, hooking it underneath the bone. "Fuck you!" I screamed. His face became overly delighted, and then he pompously pouted and asked, "Does it hurt?"
Motherfucker. He then licked the second hook, stating, I'm guessing that it hurts more the first time. He hammered the curved nail into my right shoulder, once again locking it in position under my shoulder. I bit into my tongue. He was wrong. It hurt just as much the second time. He pulled me up to his waist. The legion of forgotten, deader than already being dead army continued their march towards us. They formed a circle. I didn't cry. I didn't beg, other than wanting to save bait. I really didn't care if this dick and his loser friends killed me or not. Unbutton them. He pointed to his jeans. Why? Unbutton them, he commanded, turning from right to left, delighting the spectators. Some of them hopped on one leg, while other eyeless faces giggled as their blow-by-blow translators whispered the gory details to them. The Desian pulled tightly on my shoulders. Reluctantly, I unbuttoned the front of his pants. He stopped playing to the crowd and he motioned his head downward. And the zipper. One of the blind ones was escorted over to me. He petted at my hair, inflaming the wound in my ear. He's scared, he told the guide. To that, the guide returned. You should see his face. I think he's going to cry. Plaster rained from the ceiling as the laughter boomed through the opera house. The zipper, the finger eater let out again. I looked at the front of his pants. He jerked at my frame with the hooks. I didn't know how long I had been in captivity at the cloth compound, but it didn't seem long enough for this guy to become the leader of any group. Even this scrapyard of has-beens. The hooks elevated me further as they stretched the bones from their ligaments. I did as I was told. He had the upper hook at this point. Now pull them down, RJ. He shook his hips, initiating the pants to slump down below his pelvis. I shrugged, trying to doze off. Open your fucking eyes and pull them all the way down, boy. The group of misfits tightened their circle and Desian turned the hooks inward, relieving the shoulders but condensing my ribcage. It became increasingly difficult to breathe, so once again, I did as I was told. Commando? I wheezed. Me too. I don't need to elaborate on what limp pleasantry sat asleep directly in front of my mouth. I can say this. It was pretty cold in that theater. Shut up! Shaver, get over here! The Desian opened the center of his legs. With a syringe in his mouth, Shaver crept under him and flipped over on his back like he was a mechanic checking this idiot's brakes. You ready? Shaver cringed, as if seeing a taint was as bad as kneeling in the front of a limp cock with two hooks in his body. Yeah, the Desian sighed. Shaver released the needle from his teeth and dropped it into his hand. He took a deep breath to avoid the stench of famunda and pierced the vein on the shaft. As the plunger reached the bottom of the syringe casing, I felt the hooks in my arms tense up. I tried to close my eyes again. I knew what was in the needle, and it wasn't a narcotic. It was really difficult to try and make happy thoughts while vomit ripened in my throat and started gushing from the sides of my mouth. Shaver exited as soon as his deed was complete. Open your eyes, RJ. The excitement streaming through his body made him turn the hooks into my shoulders like he was adjusting knobs in a stereo. You know what I want now, don't you? Sing? I asked, trying to avoid the banding under my nose. Suck my dick, motherfucker. I want you to know what being disgraced feels like before we rip you into pieces and take your body parts as our own. In an attempt to appeal my conviction in the court of misfit vampires, I looked to the circle. As his member inched its way toward my face, I tried to fill my mouth with more vomit. It would taste better than the other thing inside there. I looked up at him. His face was filled with satisfaction, and he smiled from ear to ear. Getting more sickened by his vainglorious air, I tried to pull away.
The hooks had me anchored on my knees. This is it, I thought to myself. This is the end of R.J. Reynolds. Just as I was ready to throw in the towel, I looked once again to the circle of beasties. Just beyond them was a tower. It was a tower so dark that it actually stood out from the rest of the pitch-black stadium. A shadow broke from the tower, hovering toward the circle. As the shadowy figure converged, a fervor of whispering commenced in the room, and the circle broke open. The Desian, who was too proud of his accomplishment at my expense and paid his followers no mind. Like a retreating horde, the sideshow panicked back into their holes. The figure stopped about 20 feet behind the show. Black hair swirled around it like a tornado. Letting me sweat, the shape watched as the Desian's cock entered my mouth. After a few seconds, it had enough and proceeded. A shadow swelled over us, showing a sword unsheathed from behind its back. The sandbags let go of my legs and yanked on their ropes to be pulled back up to the rafters. The curtains began to close. The Desian looked down, furiously not aware that the matinee was about to end. "Keep sucking, mother—" Before he could finish his sentence, the tension from the hooks in my shoulders eased. I reached up and used all my remaining strength to clamp onto his arms at the elbow and bust them off, leaving the hooks and his bodiless arms in my shoulders. His eyes started to twitch as his head turned around to see the assailant. It was too late. His head broke at the neck, slid off his left shoulder and onto the ground, rolling under the curtain. The rest of his body folded like a squeeze box. I spat the barf in my mouth on his corpse. Eldritch extended his hand. "Need any help, my friend?" I spun my right shoulder and slipped the hook out. I grabbed Eldritch's forearm and pulled myself to my feet, then slid the second hook out, using the massive vampire's body to steady myself. "No need to thank me," Eldritch continued. "To tell you the truth, Eldritch, I wish you would have let them kill me." "You're already dead," he returned. "Not as dead as you're going to be if I live through this and anyone else ever hears about it." I let go of him and stood on my own. After a couple of lame tricks that one might expect to see at a Pee-wee karate demonstration, he spun his sword over his shoulder and back into its sheath behind his hair. "Nice sword, dude. It's a katana, said to be crafted during the Muromachi dynasty." Too tired to argue or listen, I blacked out. Good evening. This is Jason Hill, host of the Horror Hill podcast. You've been listening to a chapter from the award-winning novel Knuckle Supper by best-selling author Drew Stepek. Knuckle Supper, Ultimate Gutter Fix Edition, and its critically acclaimed sequel, Knuckleballed, are available now from Bloodbound Books. Check out the links in the video description and sticky comments below to pick up a copy today and show your support for indie horror. Also, please consider making a donation to Children of the Night today and help end teen prostitution and human trafficking. Children of the Night is a privately funded non-profit organization established in 1979 with the specific purpose of providing intervention in the lives of children who are sexually exploited and vulnerable to, or involved in, prostitution and pornography. Visit childrenofthenight.org for more information today. From author Drew Stepek and all of us here at Chilling Tales for Dark Nights, thanks for listening and for your support.
Chilling Tales for Dark